Henry VIII's rivals, the women who challenged a king. Henry VIII's reign was a tempestuous era marked by political maneuvering and religious reformation that forever altered the landscape of England. This is the story of the women who dared to challenge Henry's authority, becoming, in many ways, his most formidable rivals. Their influence, though often suppressed, shaped his decisions and left an indelible mark on English history. Catherine of Aragon, Henry's first wife, embodied unwavering loyalty to the Catholic Church. Her commitment was not merely a matter of personal faith, but a deeply ingrained sense of duty to her lineage and to the established order. When faced with Henry's growing desire for a divorce, Catherine refused to concede. She vehemently challenged the legitimacy of his claims, arguing that their marriage was sacrosanct and divinely ordained. The lack of a male heir became the catalyst for Henry's relentless pursuit of an annulment. He desperately needed a son to secure the Tudor dynasty, and Catherine's inability to provide one fueled his growing frustration. Catherine's defiance forced Henry to take drastic measures, ultimately leading to the break with Rome. He established the Church of England, declaring himself its supreme head, a move that reverberated throughout Europe. Her resistance was a direct challenge to Henry's power, a bold act of defiance that shook the foundations of his reign. Catherine's unwavering stance set the stage for the tumultuous events that would follow. Anne Boleyn initially captivated Henry with her wit, intelligence, and progressive views. She wielded considerable influence over the king, encouraging him to embrace religious reforms and challenge papal authority. However, Anne's inability to produce a male heir proved to be her undoing. Henry's desperation for a son resurfaced, casting a shadow over their marriage and fueling suspicion. Her failure to provide Henry with the long-desired male heir ultimately became the catalyst for her downfall. What had once been a passionate and politically charged union began to unravel under the weight of royal expectation and personal disappointment. As each pregnancy ended in miscarriage or resulted in a daughter, Henry's desperation for a legitimate son resurfaced with renewed intensity. This growing frustration cast a dark shadow over their marriage, eroding the trust and affection that once bound them. In a court rife with intrigue and ambition, Anne's position became increasingly precarious, and suspicion, both real and manufactured, quickly took root, paving the way for her dramatic and tragic end. Accusations of treason and adultery were leveled against Anne, leading to her swift and brutal execution. The charges, likely fabricated, served as a convenient means for Henry to rid himself of a wife who had failed to fulfill her primary duty. And Anne Boleyn soon found herself at the center of a web of damning accusations, including treason, adultery, and even incest, charges that shocked the court and sealed her fate. These allegations, widely believed by historians to have been fabricated or exaggerated, were likely orchestrated by those eager to see Anne removed from power, including Thomas Cromwell and former allies. Anne's influence went beyond her relationship with the king, pushing Henry toward further religious changes and accelerating the English Reformation. For Henry VIII, the charges provided a swift and politically convenient justification to eliminate the wife who had not delivered the promised male heir and whose influence had grown increasingly burdensome. What followed was a hurried trial marked by questionable evidence and predetermined guilt, culminating in Anne's brutal execution by sword on May 19, 1536. Anne Boleyn's story serves as a stark reminder of the precarious position of women in Tudor England. Even those who attained positions of power and influence remained vulnerable to the whims of a patriarchal society. Jane Seymour finally gave Henry the male heir he so desperately craved, a son named Edward. Tragically, Jane died shortly after childbirth, leaving Henry once again without a queen. Jane's death highlighted the inherent dangers of childbirth in the 16th century. It underscored the fragility of women's lives and the immense pressure they faced to produce male offspring. Anne of Cleves was chosen for political reasons, but Henry found her unattractive and quickly sought an annulment. Her story showcases Henry's pragmatism and his willingness to discard wives who no longer served his purposes. Catherine Howard, young and vivacious, was executed for adultery, a crime that carried a far heavier penalty for women than for men. Her fate illustrates the pervasive double standards that govern sexual behavior in Tudor England. Catherine Parr, Henry's sixth and final wife, survived him and played a significant role in shaping his religious views in his later years. She was a learned woman who advocated for religious reform and provided stability to the aging king. Tudor society was deeply patriarchal, with women's value primarily tied to their ability to bear sons. This societal expectation placed immense pressure on women, particularly those in positions of power. Despite the limitations imposed upon them, women exerted influence in various ways. They served as advisors, patrons of the arts, and wielded considerable power within their households. Double standards were rampant, particularly regarding fidelity and behavior. Women were expected to be chaste and obedient, while men were granted far greater latitude. While Henry faced external threats from foreign powers and internal rebellions, the women in his life proved to be his most persistent rivals. They challenged his authority, defied his expectations, and forced him to confront the limitations of his own power. These women significantly shaped Henry's decisions, influencing his religious policies, his marital choices, and ultimately, the course of English history. The stories of Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, and Henry's other wives reveal the brutal realities of power in Tudor England. King Henry VIII's court exposed the harsh and tragic realities of Tudor life, where ambition, politics, and desire collided. Power was both a prize and a peril. Royal favor could crown a woman one day and condemn her the next. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe so you never miss out on another video.